Frank, first thing I want to ask, give me a Queensberry exclusive. What can you tell us about the 5v5 coming up?
They're going to happen. We're going to sort the weights out, I hope, before we go home. Okay. So we're working very hard on it. So we'll know the weights, and once we've got the weights, then we can determine who the fighters will be.
And do you have a preference on? Do you already know what weights you're aiming for?
Well, we're strong in all divisions, so I haven't got a problem.
Are there any rules about matchroom having to be UK, US? Is it matchroom across the board?
I think we've all got to be pretty sensible what we're doing with that. Well, look, they have their roster of fighters, we have our roster of fighters, and we will, once the weights are determined, we will decide then who's going to be in the fights.
No cheeky last minute signings and slipping
no
them in the back door?
No ringers are going to be allowed. No.
How confident are you, Frank?
I'm very confident in our boxers. We've built up a really good, strong group of fighters for the last few years, and a lot of them are coming to sort of a really good part of their careers. They're coming through. You see Hamza Shiraz a couple of weeks ago. We've got plenty of guys like that, and you know, whatever the weight division is, I'm pretty confident we can more than hold our own.
I know we're in the glitz and glam of Saudi at the minute, but let's talk about the UK, because as much as there's all these awesome fights over here, we also have a great roster back home. Talk to me about what's coming up. What can we get the fans excited about over the next few months?
Well, Saturday week we have our Magnificent 7 event up in the Midlands. That's going to be a great night, some fantastic fights on there. And the last one, I think, was one of the best shows in the UK last year. Some really good fights on there. It'll be the same this time round. And we've got a couple of shows for the young guys that we're bringing through, and we're going to announce some really good quality events that I'm sure everybody's going to be happy with in the UK. We haven't forgotten the UK, not at all.
Outside of the fights already announced, who are your kind of UK headliners that you're really excited about this year?
I want to see Anthony Yarde back in action in a top quality fight. I'd like to see Joe Joyce try and re-establish himself. I mentioned Hamza earlier on. We've got, and I'll definitely want to get Nathan Heaney in his dream fight at Stoke City, at the football ground. And all those other young guys there, they're going to all be involved in some decent fights. There'll be some great fights to be seen out there.
Let's start with Joe, obviously fighting next week against Cash Ali, but you must kind of have one eye on the path you want to take him on this year. There's the Dubois rematch, the Parker rematch. Have you got a preference on where you want him to go?
Well, it's going to be interesting. I obviously see what happens on Friday with the fight with Joe Parker. That's going to be a real interesting fight with Zhang. And if Parker comes through, if Joe Parker comes through, big if he does come through, then I'm quite sure that he will want to try and rectify his loss, his first stoppage, by the way, because of Joe Joyce. So that's definitely a fight to be made if it happens. If it doesn't, Joe will certainly get into a big fight. And you know, look, he just couldn't, for some reason. You meet your bogeyman sometimes when you're fighting. There's no doubt about it that Zhang was his bogeyman. And he's a good operator at the highest level, both amateur and pro. We will see what Joe has left. If he wants to get a seat back at the big table, as I always say, then you've got to produce the results. So let's see what happens with him.
Nathan Heaney, I know we're talking about the big Stoke night, but he's got a serious challenge ahead of him next week.
But you know what? He's one of these guys. People in some ways, you know, he's a big ticket seller, but you know, how good is he? You know, a lot of people had their doubts about him, but let's be honest, every fight he's had, he's absolutely improved. He's a very good boxer. And I'm sure if you ask Denzel Bentley that, he'll confirm it. You know, Denzel, prior to that fight, had gone the distance with you know, a lot of people consider him one of the best world champions out there, and could have won that fight. He was there at the end, and that was quite a one-sided fight with him and Nathan. And Nathan was a massive underdog. And as I say, he's improved every fight, and he deserves his opportunity. And if it's all about the work you put into it, and the fact that he's such a nice guy as well, but the work he puts in and his preparation for fights, he's got a good chance of winning a big world title fight.
Anthony Yarde, you mentioned him earlier. Is the Buatsi fight inevitable? How far off are we from hearing an announcement of that happening?
Me personally, that's the fight I'd like to see, and I think everybody would in the UK. It's a rivalry. It's that everybody's been talking about it for a long time. We need to make it happen. After Anthony's last fight, he was at ringside. They both said they wanted a fight, so we've got to try and make it happen.
Where would you put that fight on?
It's a London fight, isn't it? It's a London fight. They're both Londoners. It's definitely a London fight.
Selhurst Park?
Well, that's a bit too far out of London. I'm from North London, so we'll have it in North or East London. I don't know. We'll find an appropriate venue for it. Don't worry about that.
Perfect. Dennis McCann, again, coming off a tough year, but somebody that if he can put a great performance in next week, he's kind of got a lot of options at the table.
He certainly has, and he's been sending me clips of his training and that. I mean, he's obviously with a new trainer now for this fight. He's left Alan on an amicable basis, but I want to see what he now brings to the table with the new guy that he's working with. But he seems very, very, very confident, and obviously there's the big fight, the big rematch to be made with him and Buatsi if he comes through.
It's a big
He's
fight.
got a tough fight.
Yeah, it's a big fight to come back into as well.
Brad Strand's no slouch. I mean, he comes from a very good stable of fighters. He works, his manager and trainer, Paul Stevenson's done a brilliant job with him. That fight is a really tough fight for both of them.
Mark Chamberlain, I know he's sort of, you're a big fan of his anyway. If he does come through tomorrow night, is it a bit of an audition for maybe being one of the names on the 5v5?
Look, it's how he performs. His Excellency asked that he be on the card, and he's on there. He's in a tough fight. I mean, that's no knockover job. Those two guys are two really good quality Queensberry fighters, and we've made a really good match. And I'm looking forward to that. I am really, as a fan, looking forward to that fight. Whoever comes through goes to the next level, and it's a great platform for them to build their career and move forward on.
We see a lot of pictures from His Excellency's house. Obviously, we don't really get to see too much behind the scenes, but I want to ask you that photo of Tyson, Cristiano Ronaldo, AJ and Gardy. Just paint the picture. What's it like in there? What happens when you go there?
We go there. We get really made welcome. We get absolutely spoilt rotten when we get there. There's always a lovely meal laid on, and His Excellency talks to everybody about how he envisaged, what he would like, and what we can do collectively to try and make some of these things happen. And up to now, we've been doing that. We've been working on it and making it happen. But when we're at the house, we get looked after like we were princes. Is it one long table with all these AJ on one side, Fury and
No,
it's a U-shaped table, and you can.
They have to look at
I'm
each
not
other.
sure the amount, but you can seat up to 60 people on the table.
And you could, so they're all looking across at each other as they eat or something.
Yeah. It's good fun. We all like it.
What an experience that must be.
Well, look, for me, I mean, I thought I'd seen it all, and I haven't. I'm 72 years of age now, and every time we come here, something's different, and something changes. But it's just, this is a phenomenal place, and it's a pleasure for me and all my team. All love coming here and working here. Everybody gets looked after well. The people are so friendly. It's absolutely spotlessly clean everywhere. It's brilliant. Safe. It's a very safe place.
Over 40 years, Frank, in the job. As you say, you're 72. What motivates you? What gets you up in the morning?
Well, first of all, I'm a boxing nut. I love my boxing. I love all sport. I'm a boxing fan through and through. Always have been since I was a kid. And making these fights happen and being part of it, and being able to be there. I mean, look, I come from Islington. I lived in a block of flats, full floor of a council estate. So, if I was to think back to the young kid I was to what's going on today, it's like it's an unbelievable dream and journey, and I've enjoyed every moment, and it keeps getting. I'm still on the journey, touch wood, still on the journey and moving forward and enjoying every moment. And we've got the biggest fight of the 21st century coming up on the 18th of May with Tyson and Usyk. That's going to be something special. And again, to be involved in that and being part of it is, for me, a privilege and a pleasure.
Have you enjoyed this friendly competition with Eddie? Because obviously You were in competition with his dad, probably in the 90s and the noughties, and now you're going up against the son.
Yeah, look, George and my son George, who's the CEO of Queensberry, they've built a bit of a relationship in dealing with things. And in fact, we met again at lunchtime, talking about a couple of matters in the future. And I think it's good. I think it's good that we can work together, because we're going to make fights happen that were pretty impossible to do for various reasons in the past. And also what's good out of this is the TV companies are working together, because that's been a problem for us. We're with TNT, he's with DAZN, and when you've got different TV companies that you're working for, they obviously want that, they don't want to be investing in fighters that are going to go across the road. It's common sense. I mean, that's how it is. And but we've now managed to sort of strike a balance here where we can do some reciprocal deals and hopefully deliver the fights that the fans have been waiting to see. I mean, there's been some great fights made, by the way. Last year we did some great shows. I mentioned earlier the fights with Zhang and Joe Joyce Parker, the Magnificent Seven. Quite a few really good events. And there's been, not just in the UK, there's been some great events also overseas. We've seen unified champions like Inui, we've seen Crawford, Heaney, all these great fighters and fights being made everywhere. And boxing's on a massive high at the moment. And what's happening here is the icing on the cake.
Daniel Dubois, again, coming off that win, I suppose it's a little bit of a waiting game to see which rival is the best option and becomes available. Look,
Daniel did phenomenally well. He re-established his career. A lot of people said some quite fierce in their view of whether he had heart or not, and he proved them all wrong, certainly in that last fight. And his next fight, I want to see him in with Hrgovic. That's the one I'd like to see.
He's got a bit of a renewed confidence, even like on social media, in interviews.
You can feel that, can't you? Yeah.
Like he speaks so much more.
Yeah, I think he got lost. A lot of momentum was lost during COVID, like for a lot of people in all respects and all walks of life. He lost a bit of momentum. He lost that fight with Joe through the terrible eye injury. He's actually had a couple of bad injuries as a young fighter, but he's overcome them. And as I say, now he feels like he's got a new lease of life, some direction, and it's with a new trainer in Don Charles, who seems to be getting the best out of him at the moment. And I think that he, looking at what's happening with all these heavyweights, and a lot of these heavyweights now are in their 30s. A couple of them in their late 30s. So it's going to be, the youngsters will come through.
He's only 25, he's already had all that experience.
Yeah.
You kind of think it's probably going to be there for the taking in a couple of years.
Exactly, and that's what I feel. And he gets the right opportunity. I'm sure he'll capitalise on it, seize the moment, and come through. He's capable of it. Tremendous puncher, great finisher. And I was talking to Kevin Lorena, whose mother died yesterday. He sent him his condolences. We was talking prior to hearing that news, and he was saying to me himself, he couldn't believe the power, because he had him on the floor. He had Daniel down, and he tore all his ligaments in his leg. But he showed a bit of grit in that fight. Came back, and he said his power's phenomenal.
I hear it in the gyms as well. Everyone who spars him says probably one of the hardest punches.
That's true. That's true.
Sorry, just lastly on Daniel, the Joyce rematch, is that something that you're quite keen to make at some point?
It's a good fight to be made, isn't it? It's definitely a big fight to be made, either here or in the UK, absolutely.
Moses, he's obviously, is it 6 wins in his first year, which is
I think
unreal.
He's up to 7, isn't he?
7, yes.
He's fighting, he's got a fight coming up, and then he comes through that on the 18th of May here. Look, he's like a prodigy. He's a guy who, at a very young age, and we spotted him very young when we were sponsoring him, and he's a guy who went and won the European Amateur Championships, the World Amateur Championships as a junior, and knocks everybody out. I mean, that is something special, and everybody who spars with him says, what a tremendous talent he is. And I was talking with Tyson today with him, and Tyson actually said to me, he genuinely feels he'd be the next big thing.
And we talk about the way the landscape is now. You've got the next generation Dubois, and probably the generation after that, Moses.
Well, I hope so. We're very strong in the heavyweight division. We've got a really good roster of heavyweights. So we're quite happy. But it's not just happened. We worked on that. We went out. we bought Joe Joyce's contract off another promoter. We invested in it in where it's come to. You know, Zhang's with us now, who's an absolute monster. I don't mean well a monster. He's a big guy, but he's a very capable guy, and I'm really looking forward to that fight.
Is it on the T-shirt there? 100% boxing with the Queensberry logo.
That's what we are. Queensberry is 100% what we do, boxing.
Compared to everyone else, does that give us the edge when it comes to things like the 5v5?
It does, because we're not out here, we're there, focused on boxing. That's what we do.